So we found a Marcel in the wild, which is difficult and wily to catch. This is Marcel Walker, who I've known since my time at the Comic-Con, and he's agreed to answer some of our questions. So Marcel, you're a pretty stylish guy.
Thanks.
Why do you think that most of the rest of the geeks here aren't?
Oh gosh, that's a... No, that doesn't put me on the spot at all.
Well, all of these will put you on the spot. Don't get comfortable. They're all uncomfortable.
Well, how about I answer your question like this? Because I was just talking with somebody on my way here about preconceptions, about how people in this culture, how they look and how they dress. And I thought, thoughts were coming to me. Because sometimes, you know, we're on when we have these preconceptions, these stereotypes about how fandom dresses here. You know, they're definitely walking around here today. I thought, wouldn't it be funny if we kind of changed that? You know, so what if we decided when we went to Comic-Cons, we decided the thing to do would be to dress up?
That's what I'm saying. If everybody turns it out, then it turns the stereotype on its head.
So somebody wanted to come and just totally geek out, you know, everybody would look at them and go, oh.
We should all just roll in suits next year.
That would be badass. I would totally be down with that.
I'm down with that.
In a suit. What color coordinate?
Well, navy's very in right now. But I don't know about next year, so we'll wait. All right, now that was the softball question out of all of them. The rest of them are much worse, and they're all about gender.
I'm on.
All right. So why, and you're an artist yourself, so you can tell us from experience, why when women are drawn in comics, they have the unrealistically large breasts and the unrealistic bodies that aren't ever really seen and aren't really conducive to doing superheroic things. Like, it would actually be difficult for them to do the things they do with the bodies they have.
Well, I think that's part of even larger things. You know, I'll try to keep my answer as succinct as I can. But, you know, you look at the whole of superhero comics, and it's all about exaggeration. Everything's about exaggeration. Every element of it. And, you know, the male characters are exaggerated, the female characters are exaggerated. Now, we're speaking specifically about the female characters. You look at the history of comics, specifically American comics. They've been predominantly produced by and produced for men. So I think that has a lot to do. You know, you're looking at female characters as refracted through a male viewpoint, you know, consistently over time, and it has changed over time. But there's a lot of things that have not changed, or I'd even say have changed for the worse. So if we're looking at, and also with superhero comics, specifically this genre, we're looking at a lot of idealism at work, and I don't know if that's necessarily a good thing or a bad thing.
Yeah.
I won't even weigh in on that one way or another here. I have my own opinions on that. But what do we, when we look at people and we idealize people physically, you know, what are we inclined to emphasize or put emphasis on?
And do you think that there's a giant degree of misogyny to that, though? Do you think it makes it alienating for women who are trying to get into comics? I mean, when you look around yourself here, there aren't a lot of girls. There definitely aren't. Like,
more
especially
than there have been in the past.
Definitely more than there have been in the past. But I mean, especially sitting behind tables. Like, most of the girls are either in costumes or with their boyfriends.
I would say from a creative point of view, and this is just my own observance, I don't know if it's so much from its degrees of misogyny that cause that to come to be. I think it's more degrees of cluelessness. You know, if things have always been a certain way, and you're just used to things being a certain way, you don't even think twice about it.
So you just kind of like accept it as the status quo, and that's the way it is.
And maybe this isn't the most realistic viewpoint or way to approach a subject, or maybe there are other people that might find this offensive and don't take to it. You know, similarly, you know, if you jump back 40, 50 years in comics, you know, a lot of people weren't always represented that
they still aren't. I mean, at least as far as my opinion, but I don't think there's a lot of diversity here. I think is what the main point of it is for me. Like, I look around and I see white male, white male, white male, white male, white male, but.
Well, and again, I think
I think I might look through white male colored glasses.
I think a lot of Americans.
Yeah.
But I mean, I think, you know, there are the things that are different, and there are the things, you know, there are people who are doing this. I don't want to say this. I don't want to be too, you know, too mean-spirited and point fingers at specific people. But I think there is a lot of diversity, but you do have to look for it right now. It's not quite as prevalent as certain other things.
It's just not as broad as it could be.
And I don't, you know, not to put happy faces on it all, but you know, I I do think things are changing. They're probably changing slower than a lot of us would like to see them changing. But I think the change is there.
Like, I would think that this is probably the first time that this has been talked about on the floor with so many people over and over again, just from the reactions. Do you want the political question?
Sure.
Or no? Okay.
I don't mind.
I'll back you out of it if you want.
Okay.
So lately there has been a talk of war on women, especially up running to the election. There are a lot of conversations about contraception. There are a lot of conversations about when conception happens and if it will be illegal at any point for a woman to have an abortion. Basically, lots of women's issues in the news. So all male legislatures are making these decisions. Why isn't anyone maybe pushing for that not to happen? Like, they had the one panel about contraception, it was all men. That wasn't corrected. Like, wait, how do you stand on that?
I don't. Now it's just trying to formulate the thoughts. Well, I do think people do stand in objection to it. And, here's what I think happens with a lot of these issues. Like, we encounter these situations that seem, at least on their face, so absurd. It's absurd that we would be talking about women's rights and reproductive rights and not including women. It's absurd. It's so absurd, I think the people that are intelligent, we just assume are intelligent enough to recognize that's absurd, we don't necessarily make the noise we should. In my case, I know sometimes I hear these things and I don't necessarily make noise just because I can't believe it's real.
Right.
Or and again, I just presume a lot of the people that I interact with are on the same page. More often than not, I'm right. I will also say that when that was, when that had started, I actually got a number of emails and things from organizations that were essentially putting out rallying. I also did two of those things. Frankly, dumb people are really loud.
Yes, they are.
I think that's a lot of it. Like, smart people, you don't often hear as much, and maybe that needs to change a bit.
And I think it's also weird that we sort of insulate ourselves with good people, I think, like-minded people, so we tend to get into this microcosm where it's like, well, I don't know anybody that thinks like that, so you feel like there aren't people that think like that, but there are a lot of people that think like that. All right, let's go back to the non-political ones.
Answer?
No, that's perfect. That's perfect. Have you ever had a romance at a con?
I have a lot of romances.
That is easily the most confident answer we've gotten so far. All the rest of the guys were like, kind of, or maybe not yet. But no.
No, I actually was going through some older convention pictures not too long ago, like analog pictures. I was like, I remember when I was with her. I remember her. Oh, I wonder whatever happened to her. Yeah.
Does it kind of scare you the way that women are treated here sometimes? Like,
yes
sort of.
No. Yes and no.
Yes and no.
Yes and no.
Ooh, elaborate.
All right. Well, yes, there's a lot of objectification, but I mean, objectification is also part of just this culture. Not just saying that we just need to be objectifying everybody.
No, it really is, though. It's ingrained in it.
But it's just part of the whole culture,
It's the same thing we were talking about before, the way that women get drawn, at least. I think that men who grew up reading comics have weird, I don't know how to say it.
Preconceptions.
Yeah, like just different things in their mind about the way that women actually are.
And, I mean, again, you get into much larger talking points, larger issues with that, because, like, what is on the mindset of the average comic person? That's kind of hard to say. I know a lot of totally normal people who read comics with those acceptable mindsets and things. I know a lot of those people. I know a fair amount of other people who have kind of, shall we say, skewed perspectives on stuff.
Perspectives is a nice way to say it.
So, you take that for what it is, but trying to formulate the thoughts and
It's okay, we'll edit.
Yes and no. No, because I'll be honest, and I have actually said this to women in the past. In ways, because of the roles that women have at comic conventions and things of this culture, there's some power to be had in that. Like there really is if you stop and think about it. There's a young lady, I was just reading about this at a video game convention. This happened just this past week. And long and short of it is she got she was told she was going to have to leave the floor if she didn't change her costume. And she just got told this twice. Now, she was actually at a booth. She was helping to promote a video game. She was there officially dressed as their video game's character. She was representing the main character in the game. And she had already been there for a day. So it was like the second day when the staff told her she was going to have to change or get off the floor. So she changed, she comes back, and again they told her you're going to have to change or get off the floor. So she changed into something else and was allowed to stay. Now what I thought was interesting about this, because I've read about this on a Facebook thread, and everybody was, had weighing in with their own opinions. What got me though was how funny it is that people reacted to how she was dressed, when I guarantee you there were video games they were playing that were extremely, excessively violent.
He's too popular.
Bam, bam, how you doing? Nice to see you. Click. There were video games there that were excessively violent, and I guarantee you nobody said anything about that. So that also says a lot about sex and violence and how we treat those two things in our culture. But this is not that I want to be walking comic convention or stand by, but like the woman has selling power based on how she looks. I'm not saying I think that's good and we should all cotton to that, but it is something to consider. And
I think a lot of the girls that dress up and things like that do it because when they do it they feel powerful.
Absolutely.
And maybe in a lot of areas of their lives they're not getting that sort of attention that they would get when they come here. So I think that that's a lot of it. Oh no, there's Wayne.
Well, Sean done. Protect me. Can I just throw one thing out? I want to be all superwoman. I actually just reached out to a cosplayer recently. This is one of the cosplayers that's online, and she's like very, very well known. I reached out to her because I just happened to see her in a particular costume that I thought was really kick-ass. Wow, that was amazing. And I was curious if she'd made it. And if you saw her, if you saw photos of her, because she's built like a cosplayer, you might not, I don't know, you would probably look at her and you'd have a lot of preconceptions. I think most of us would, because again, when we say how these are bigger issues, I think it's even bigger than just comic conventions, how society sees
Oh yeah, of course, it ties in all of that, yeah.
So I wrote her, and she actually wrote me back the nicest, sweetest, most detailed letter that I would have ever expected in response. And we corresponded a couple times. And she told me, yes, she made her costumes, and she went into detail in the background. And I wrote her back one more time, and I told her that I was now a fan. And it's funny because I told her I was a fan, not because of how she looked or even the costume, but because she was so nice in the way she handled that. And I'm not saying everybody should be like Marcel. They should. But if we just, if we let go of a lot of our preconceptions, because if I just looked at her and went by my preconception of how she looked, I might have just written her off as, an airhead who just wants attention because of how she looks. I'd never stopped to consider, maybe she's a person with feelings who actually is really passionate about what she does.
Yeah, totally agreed.
So, there's a lot beneath the surface that goes on here. I do think all of us need to pause before we just have our knee-jerk reactions to
Absolutely.
How this person's dressed or how that person looks or how this person's drawing that. Although, we should also pay some attention to that stuff too.
Beneath the surface is what we're talking about. Thank you very much. Thank you, Marcel. You're wonderful as